Hello, and welcome to another session here at Decode. I hope you're having a great conference so far. I'd like to talk to you today about WordPress and media newsrooms. We think that WordPress is ideally situated to power really complex media newsroom use cases, being one of the best CMSs in the world for editorial content. In fact, here at WP Engine, about a third of our customers are in this space. And there's a lot of different workflow needs that we see across these customers. And with me today, I have Jason Agnew from Big Byte, who is here to talk to us about his experiences with large newsrooms and their complicated workflows and how they've adjusted WordPress to meet those workflow needs and how they've optimized WordPress to be more intuitive, efficient, and effective in the newsroom. And I also have my colleague, Kellen Mace from our development relations team here. And we're going to talk to you about how to optimize WordPress for the newsroom. Hey, Jason. Hey, Kellen. Welcome. So it's really great to have you here today, Jason. We have a lot of people watching today and they might not be familiar with what you and Big Byte do. Can you tell us a little bit about, what you're doing in this space and how you're helping your customers?
Yeah, so we're an enterprise WordPress agency, and about 6 years ago, we started working with companies like News Corp and IGG and DMG, a lot of the different brands that are out there. And initially it was, WordPress websites effectively, but over time that evolved into workflows and saving people time in the newsroom and focusing on their jobs and how to make it easier. I guess the thing that we noticed over time was just that it's quite a lot of cost for them to implement these features for everyone, and not every publisher is the same size. So about a year ago, we started working on a plugin called MediaPress, and essentially it's taking what we've learned over those years and packaging some of it up. And we just want to make sure everyone has those benefits, and that's kind of a bit like the WordPress spirit in some ways. I want to create a bit of a community around it too. So I'll show you a feature maybe later on where we build it for a client NRC, and hopefully we can ship that back into MediaPress. And if we keep doing that, then every company's sharing code and we're all benefiting from it.
Now, that certainly is in the spirit of WordPress, that community collaboration, and I'd love to see that. And you've been following along as you've been building this with the team. What are some of the key pain points that you're solving with this?
Yeah, I think it's really just around managing your content. That can be things like revisions, just being able to see what changes have been made. And, WordPress is great, but the revisions panel hasn't been updated in many years. And I guess that leads on to the same with media. The media library is showing its age right now. And I'm sure Core will catch up with all these features long term. They're all roadmapped to be improved, but these companies can't necessarily wait. So we're just trying to bring the features to them sooner. There's things like managing links as well. That's a tricky thing to do, connecting to external systems and making sure the links are all maintained. It's the training side of things as well. Like, how long does it take someone to get into use your CMS? So we have simple things like publication checklists. It just gives people a guide of what they should and shouldn't be doing. And then, we also want to bring in the internal dev teams and make life easier for them too. So things like just having a meta panel where they can add fields really easily from a config just simplifies their job. So if they need to add something in for ads, and we roll that out with site settings as well, maybe they just need to control how the paywall works and they don't really want to have to deploy for those changes. So it's just trying to bring everyone on board to the CMS and making it a little bit easier for them.
Talking to a lot of our customers and partners, one of the key pain points that we hear time and time again is making edits to content that's already live, and especially in the newsroom where stories change, they're updated, you have new information, things like that. Is a challenge today for them because there's no concept of a draft update to a post. So do you have any solutions around that?
Yeah, so that is a common problem, and I'll share my screen and show you what's there that we have at the minute. So here we've got a live post at the minute, and you'll see there's just a save button, and that would ship an update right away. So I'm just going to change the date here, and you'll see you've got this little tab down here where it lets us pick save without publish. And I'm just going to call this correct date for now. And what this is going to do is it's going to create a new post. And you can see you can go back to the original if you need. And if we open the sidebar, I can show you down here that actually there's a little note to say that what it's called and the status of it as well. The idea is really simple. Like, you could get someone to preview this if you needed to before the content went out. It could be evergreen content. Maybe you need to schedule it. Maybe it's about a TV show and you want to schedule it for the minute the TV show is finished. So it allows you to make whatever edits you need in a separate post, and you can abandon them as well. What happens if you decide, actually, this didn't make sense to go out? When I go to publish this, it will just merge us back into the original post. And now we're back. And what I might just do is just kind of show you revisions as well while we're here. So just let me make a couple of edits. So I'll just take out this out of the title. And I'm just going to just take that out as well, just to kind of show you. And we'll just do a little save because it doesn't matter too much here. And then if we go back to the post screen, this is where your revisions would normally be. And I can just show you in here the different changes that happen. So this is the visual side of stuff. So WordPress doesn't have this visual rendered block editor at the minute, but you can see that we obviously removed the required. And then you might be like, where's the title? And actually that is a really interesting point because titles are technically meta. And this is probably one of the coolest things about this. For a developer anyway, you might be like, this is brilliant, is being able to compare metadata. And so it might seem small, but if you're debugging, and when I demoed this to PMC, they were like, this is brilliant. This is what we could do. If an article's running into an issue, is it metadata or is it the actual editor content that's changed? And so you can see in here, I removed late. Obviously, at any point, you can restore these as well. So you have that flexibility and it goes back, and there's markers to say if it's been a published or a draft, so you know the different states. So yeah, that gives you a bit of an insight to what you might do on a current article that's already out there.
So Jason, thanks for the demo so far. One question I have is about revision histories and if the two get merged. So what I mean is, like, let's say you have an original article that's already out there, it's been published, but now the newsroom wants to make an update to that, right? So they use the system to effectively clone it and have a draft that folks can peer review and get ready, right? And then when they merge that into the original, as you said, are any revisions that happened on the ladder, do they become part of the format? Like it would be a single list of revisions? How does that work?
Yeah, so it would essentially be the revisions getting merged down from that original one. Obviously, it gets a little bit more complicated if you have varying versions, so you've decided to branch off multiple times, because in that case, it's a little bit too complicated to track all of them. You would be tracking the difference between each of the resulting articles in that perspective. But, I always say to people, you can't make a tool perfect. You want to get people 80% of the way there so they see the benefit of it. And as long as they understand sort of the edge cases in a system like that, because what we don't want to do is introduce some sort of Git style workflow, which would be quite complicated for someone to maybe follow. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. It does, yeah. Yeah, and so for the folks at home, this is, WordPress out of the box. Your experience would be, WordPress has a great system of building up a draft until it's ready and then publishing it. But then after it's live, the concept of, making unpublished changes kind of goes away, right? So this empowers newsrooms to have that then. You can go back to that, kind of peer review. We're getting another edition, another version ready to an already published post. So it's very cool. Thank you for showing that off.
So I can see this being incredibly useful in helping publishers and newsrooms, edit live content and make those revisions and really stick to the workflows that they're used to when they're creating content from scratch. I know in talking to a lot of our customers and partners in this space that workflows are varied from customer to customer. Some are simple, some are complex. What sorts of solutions have you created that help with these problems and in a changing environment where one customer might need very little and another customer needs a whole lot?
Yeah, it is tricky. Every publication is different, as you said, but there's common things that you can put in here. We all use a good checklist, don't we, in life of what we're meant to do in a day. And so we've brought that kind of mindset in. So if you jump to this article and we look up here, there's a little orange icon and it has rule sets of what we want people to do. Now, these aren't necessarily blocking them from publishing, but these are warnings, these would be good things for you to do. And so, they can add these rules in for a config. If we were in a news story, which is hop 2, it's red because we haven't inputted any of them. So publishing's blocked. And so this works really well. And so if I went in and put some of this stuff in, like your SEO headline, for example, I can jump into the meta side and I can put something in here. So I'll just put sand and tear. And you can see that that's now gone from there because we've done the headline title. And having little indicators like, what the desired length would be is quite useful for them as well. It's trying to simplify so they don't need to know this information off by heart. I think another cool area is that being able to comment and, leave notes within inside an article as well. Everyone's used Google Docs, and I guess that it's a lot more familiar now for being able to comment on an article. I'll just show you something that we built for NRC, which is editorial comments. And actually, this concept comes originally from the Times work that we done 6 years ago. And NRC went to do a tour of their newsroom, and we're like, we love this feature. And they asked us, could we rebuild it in a way that suits them a little bit better? An interesting thing with this is this is coming to core eventually. So we had to make it a bit more compatible with the route that core is taking. So long term, you can migrate to the core feature if you want to. But, let's say I want to just say something like, we said earlier, like let's check the date. And that's an article level note. So someone came in, they would see that note saying that we need to check that. Or it could be something like, let's embargo that content. It's not allowed to go out to a certain date. Then there's other things like, so if we wanted to put an inline note, so if I wanted to make sure that that was the right number of branches or where did we get the information from, I can add an inline. So I can just say, where did we? And I can add it and that'll come up on the side here and people can reply to it. So this conversation can be tracked. And this is great as well for like legal later. If there's ever an issue, we could be like, well, this is where we got the information from. We've tracked it. You can reply or resolve. I'll just resolve because it's just me. Another good thing is if you're going to delete something, being able to not totally delete it, but not have it come through the content. This is called a soft delete, and it's part of the subbing process in the Times. NRC decided they wanted it as well. So you can do a soft delete. Let's put test in for now, but we can basically remove this. It puts a comment in here, and it's highlighted for us there. And you can remove these. So when it goes out to the front end of a site, it's gone, but in the back end, you can still see them. So it's quite handy if you want to delete something, but you don't want to lose it completely. And I think these sort of like, along with things like revision stuff, it makes it a lot easier. Another interesting feature is being able to do links, which I mentioned at the beginning. And that's just, it's important to link back to other pieces of content or items that maybe you're trying to sell. If it's, you've got products and stuff on your site. So what you can do is highlight a piece of text and do a search for it. And it can come from anywhere in the WordPress database, or it could come from an external database, like an API. Right now, I've just got very few bits of content on the site because I spun up fresh. And in here, you can see we can search Google and stuff. But for now, I'm just going to select this article that we do have, and that creates a link for us. And they're a little bit easier to manage then in the future. And so this helps us encourage. And long term, we've considered building in a bit of a wizard matched with a publication checklist, which would say, hey, can you make sure you enter free links in this article to encourage it so the editors know what the expectation is for them to boost the SEO of the site?
That's really great. And it seems like a time saver since doing this the traditional way is to go to your actual website, find the article, copy and paste, and put it into this flow. I can see also connecting to other data sources through an API is incredibly valuable. Perhaps if you have a knowledge base or something like that, and you want to source articles from there, that could be really, really powerful.
Right. I'm wondering, is there a way to view the links, like on a list, maybe? Just at a glance, so you can see everything that's linked?
No, but that is a good suggestion. That's not in there now.
I was curious.
But yeah, I mean, as I said, there's, these things are like the foundation. I always think MediaPress is a really good place to give you the UI for you to build on top of. We're really hoping that, clients, agencies take the opportunities to supply ideas and build on this as well. It's obvious when people use this that they say, where's the AI? How can we automate some of this stuff? And I say, well, we've built the UI and we'll give you the APIs to work with. Let's see other people develop the extensions for it.
Well, that's really interesting. Maybe Kellen, you and I can go and do a PR on this and add to it.
So Jason, one thing I was wondering about related to the soft delete feature is, just kind of a practical example, like some of these large scale newsrooms you work with. What's a good example of something that they would want to remain in the body of the post? So the content editors, still have that there for their reference, but it's soft deleted and therefore like not visible to the public. Like what's a common use for that?
Yeah, I think it's probably good if I give some context to where the feature originally formed from.
Sure.
When we were shadowing in the Times newsroom 6 years ago, they have this feature inside their CMS method where they could leave notes in line with the content, and they would be able to hide the notes. Essentially, what our soft delete does, and an original reason we built it was that give them a similar workflow without forcing them to change. It's as a tech team, it's very easy for me to say, let's adopt a Google Doc style format for working, but they've been working this way for years. So it was kind of like, well, how can we compromise? And so soft deletes were originally built with that in mindset. Since then, that might not be as relevant with things like, revisions is pretty good now, so maybe they don't really need the soft deletes. But the problem with revisions is it's an overall change to the article. So if there's 4 changes done, you can only revert one. With a soft delete, you can just revert that one specific delete and get it back if you disagree with the delete. Now, we're working on something called track changes, which is a slightly different feature to this, which probably long-term will replace the concept of a soft delete. And that is that every individual change and addition is stored. And then that allows you to revert them one by one rather than necessarily having to go into a revision or to use the soft delete feature. And we're working on that in conjunction with the Wall Street Journal at the minute.
Well, that's really interesting stuff. And it seems to be born out of a lot of real world applications with your customers. A number of customers that I've talked to talk about some of the challenges in managing and optimizing media assets for these sites. Can you tell us a little bit about what you've done in that space?
Yeah, it's definitely one we've struggled with to find the perfect solution to. We've gone as far in the past to building pretty much a Photoshop inside WordPress to give people those editing abilities. We've talked a lot about the New York Post's image collage tool that we built them, which allows them to make those image collages on the fly for a lot of their articles. We try and solve just the minimal amount that they need for this. When we did build more of the Photoshop experience, it was too much to maintain. And that's a big battle when you're building. It's like, how much is it to maintain and how will it handle WordPress releases? So we've took a bit of a simpler approach in MediaPress because there's definitely needs to be something done about it, but we didn't want to go as far as we have with others. So let me just jump into a demo of this. You'll see these tabs along the top, and one of them is media. And this is a really simple concept. Essentially, what we want to be able to do is attach specific bits of media to an article. And that's because the media library size can be kind of slow, and it's difficult for a user to pop in and find the image that they want when they're in the middle of writing the content. Now, bigger newsrooms even have separate people managing the images. So this allows someone who's in charge of the images to put them in a folder for them. And then the person who's doing the copy editing can go in and just pick an approved list of images that they've got. So there's no images in this article at the minute. We need to set up a featured image, and we also want to put one inline. So I'll hop back in. I've got 2 standard there images here. I'm just going to add, just hit this. They're both in there now. They're not being currently used. On the side here, we can search the entire media library as well. What I'll just do is we'll go in here and I'll just set up a featured image as well. So same as you would normally do. And I'm going to pick this image here. And now that's in there now. And there's this extra button that we've got as well, because the other problem is crop points within images. So open this up and you can see like there's a bit of a weird crop point because you're kind of cutting off this person. So I can just click this button and I can just slide this across, make them more central focused. Now I can also replace the image if I wanted to. For speed, I'll just quickly adjust this one as well. So we've got these set up correctly now and we can close that. Now, why don't we just drop down and we'll just add an image block in. And again, when you open the media library, you can see it's only just got these 2 images. So we've simplified that process for them. And really, this is just the foundation for us. There'll be a lot more that we can do long term. For example, in here, extending this to have extra fields that you can manage, similar to the way that we have Meta. And the last thing I'll just point out is you can see that there's in use at the minute. So it's better in use tracking, and that'll help in long term if there's any billing in terms of when you buy your images from as well.
That seems like it could really simplify the editorial process and help them focus on, here's the images that are approved for this article. Here's what's already been selected. That's really great. Just wondering, does the image source need to be limited to the media library in WordPress?
Not really. Like most of these things, you're building an interface. It's the UI that you're focusing on. And so this search and this list here could in theory be external to WordPress if you did have your own image system in place. A lot of publications do. they'll be pulling feeds in from places like Getty, and they'll store that somewhere else where they can figure out, what's okay to use, how the billing's going to be controlled. And so it's possible for us to hook up to those systems as well.
I could see a lot of future extensions revolving around integrations with digital asset management systems. That could be really powerful for these newsrooms.
For sure. I think that would be really exciting addition. And yourself, there's that many DAM systems out there that, we're not going to be able to do them all. So let's hope that we can maybe standardize some of the integrations with them and then allow other people to kind of build those adapters.
Yeah, I think that's a really good pattern. Showcase, here's how it could be done. Here's the APIs. And, if you have your own homegrown asset management system or a vendor that isn't integrated with, you can kind of wire it up and contribute to the project.
I was just thinking, this feature seems very powerful. I've worked on like production WordPress sites for big name companies where, they basically lost track of, all the stuff in their media library and which of those images might have been used at one point in a post, but maybe they're not anymore used any longer. And now you have these kind of orphaned, assets kind of cluttering up the media library. And the solution for the longest time has been, well, get the developer to write a script where it goes through the post content of all of these countless articles and tries to, locate the image tags and figure out, what's actually linked to this article in the media library. So I'm a big fan of this kind of two-way relationship, where you can go to the post, see all the images it has, or if you start from the other direction and go to the media library, see the in-use, labels here, and then which article they're linked to. Like, to me, that's really big, especially at scale. I can only imagine, the Times and some of these clients, like, how important that is to have this relationship and keep track of what's used where. So
yeah, they're really good points. Something that happens a lot in those bigger CMSs is archiving. They'll archive the post content after, say, 30 days because they want to keep the CMS lean. But actually, a lot of times it's trickier to archive the media because they're not totally sure if it's being used in the most current post or not. So part of this idea revolved around being able to clean out unused media a lot easier if you wanted to. So, because which ones are attached to the post or related to it, and you can set your own rules around archiving so you can keep that CMS a lot leaner in the long run.
That's a really good point, and it leads into sort of the final topic I want to talk about, and that is performance optimizations. And what sorts of considerations do you have to have when building a high-performing newsroom? Revisions, we know, adds a lot to the database. Media, as you just mentioned, adds a lot to the database, and that can slow things down. What are some of the ways that you can optimize these, the CMS and, the site to combat that?
Yeah, I mean, revisions, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because it's a requirement for a big organization. Legally, a lot of times they have to store them all in case something happens. But then on the other flip side, if you're a much smaller site, you don't really need them to that same level. So like WordPress is designed for everyone. A lot of its features, are varied to those people. So, if you're a big publication, you'll probably be paying for more resources. So for example, you can probably have unlimited revisions if you really needed it to be. Whereas if you've got your own website, you might only need 1 or 2 revisions for that. So there's quite a bit of flexibility in there. I mean, in terms of just general performance, like we definitely try and minimize the amount of external plugins that we use on a site. And that's not to say plugins inherently bad, but just keeping it smaller and that pool of what we control is really important. Gutenberg's interesting because it's definitely made building sites easier. But equally now it's JavaScript and it's running in people's browsers, and you have engineering teams with high spec computers. Sometimes the code that's written for it can be heavy on the user, and that's something that you've got to take into consideration. What is that person using to browse the site and write content on? Back when we were working with HSBC and we launched Gutenberg in the beta state, it's just like browser compatibility was an issue at that point. In a bank, they have a lot older browser systems running because of the requirements. And so it's just trying to take in a viewpoint of kind of keeping things as simple as possible. One area that I'm very keen to try, and I guess it highlights the things of like DAM integrations, is that relying on infrastructure to improve stuff. So WordPress is great, but it's okay for us to link into other services to support them. So, we had a lot of issues around the post lock-in, for example, when there's lots of users, and post lock can be quite a frustrating feature. if it's not accurate and quick to change when someone leaves an article. And that relies on the WordPress heartbeat, which is heavy on its own right and is a resource. So being able to consider, well, you can push that into another service which supports WebSockets or other stuff to improve some of those little features is really important. So I'm a firm believer in like just finding what's right for the job. And a little WordPress will power most of it. It's okay if 5% of it is somewhere else to try and make it better.
And you had mentioned earlier that, you built this, sort of architecture agnostic, it works traditionally, it works in headless. When do you see the need to build headless or hybrid or traditional with your customers?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of headless, but at the same time, it's keeping things simple. Not every customer needs it. It's very easy to build a native site and it's very easy to look after it because it's the same development team throughout the whole process. And that's great. And that suits a lot of people. And so when you first start this process, you need to understand what is your requirements. Like, why are you going headless? Is it because you can't scale WordPress? Are you at the top of the market where actually WordPress itself, there's problems with the scale? Is it costing more to run it? It could be that WordPress does scale, but it's just the cost of running it. That level isn't worth it. And you want to do something a little bit different. Where I think headless really shines though, is being able to run multiple CMSs powering one site. And this is really cool because if we go into a company and they have an old CMS, so even Times was a good example, they're running Mafode. Well, you can build WordPress, hook it into the headless system and publish a couple of stories a week in WordPress while you're still running the old CMS as you slowly transition each desk over to using the new CMS. So it's kind of like A/B testing in some ways, your CMS. And I love that idea about being able to replace specific pages. I know you guys actually do it on the WP Engine website where you can override a page with a completely different one. And I think like data is really key when you're doing websites. So at the minute we're doing a lot of ad testing with ITP and like, it's that like, how do we know what works? Well, let's try lots of different experiments and collect the data. And so I think headless really opens the door for doing that.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think the right tool for the right job, and you have to have a really good reason to do that. And I think, traditional WordPress is one tool, hybrid like we do at WPEngine.com, or fully headless. Pick the right tool for the right job and the right application. So, well, I want to close us up here, and thank you, Jason and Kellen, for the really great conversation here. Jason and the Big Byte team, you've done a lot of really great work. And, I love that you're inviting others to participate in this. I think building these specialized tools is really important in this vertical. I'd love to hear from you, the audience, developers, partners, media editors, to hear about your challenges in this space. And, explore that with us in Big Byte as we build new solutions for this vertical that are aimed at solving these workflow challenges. So if you'd like to have a conversation with us in Big Byte, please follow the link that we're showing on the screen and fill out the form, and we'll get something scheduled. We'd love to get this into your hands and get that feedback from you, the folks that are doing the work, that are doing the daily jobs to be done, so that we can continue to improve this and work together to really solve the challenges in this space. So again, thank you for your time today. Thank you, Jason, for all of the insights and capabilities that you showed off today, and Kellen for your questions as well. This has been a really enjoyable session for me, and I'm looking forward to having many more in the future.